Mic check, 1 2 1 2.
One thing that did happen during the 60s was some music of an unusual or experimental nature did get recorded and did get released. Now look at who the executives were in those companies at those times. Not hip young guys. These were cigar-chomping old guys who looked at the product that came and said, I don't know. Who knows what it is? Record it, stick it out. If it sells, all right. We were better off with those guys than we are now with the supposedly hip young executives who are making the decisions of what people should see and hear in the marketplace.
Success in the music business begins with a dream, a vision. This podcast will give you, the listener, the insight and tools to turn that vision into a reality. Meet the industry professionals who work day by day behind the scenes, helping to make those dreams come true. Welcome to the business side of music.
This is Bob Bender. You're listening to this edition of The Business Side of Music. Today in the studio, a special friend of mine. I've known her for, well, I was thinking about that. I've known her for about 20 some odd years. We first met when I was at the record label. We were working Leanne Rimes. I think it was maybe her second single together at radio. And got to know this wonderful lady really well. And her name fits her perfect because she is Precious. Preshias Harris, welcome to the show.
Thank you. I'm so glad to be here. I'm excited about this topic today.
Yeah, you know, this is actually a very good topic because you and I, we have both been around the block. We've had to deal with these things in the past. What it comes down to, this is to me is one of the most timely and topical discussions that is evergreen. It just never seems to go away. And that is, my child wants to be in the music business. You could actually say my child wants to be in the movie business or wants to be in the television business. It's all the same because our expertise, or at least like we like to think it is in the music business. You've seen your share of things.
Broken dreams.
Yeah.
All up and down Music Row.
And I like what you said in the very beginning that, you know, not all that glitters is gold. You know, some of it is fool's gold because of, you know, what goes on in this industry. And it's not just Nashville. It happens in New York, happens in L.A., happens everywhere.
Exactly. And with the onset of the internet and the mega watched talent shows, it gives a false aura that your child could be doing that. First of all, I have a client that's got almost 8 million views on Facebook. He's got 10 million streams on Spotify. And I'm finally getting a record label to look at him. So if your child's got 14 friends and you think they're ready for a record deal, you might want to jump back and put 5 years of working on their social media into it. Because that's the first thing you're going to ask you. Because record labels, because of the piracy, Nashville alone, I talked to Bart Harbison, who's executive director of Nashville Songwriters Association International. Nashville alone, on a daily basis, just from these 5 blocks of songwriters, is losing in revenue $3 million a day.
In songwriting.
And that's a lot, because we are the songwriting capital of the world.
Absolutely. Let's back up a little bit. But before we started the show, you said something that you started in this business. Your mom was actually in this business.
Yes, my mother and my father. My father's cousins are Phil and Dawn Everly. Their grandmother is my great aunt. And so I sort of grew up a little on the business, you know, just knowing about on the rock side and things that you've seen. But my mother was actually the performer, the artist, the songwriter. And I remember her selling 10,000 copies of her song on a record and never got one check. And then I remember her coming to Nashville. She was going to be, who is now Sandy Patty, years and years ago.
Right.
Coming to a faith-based Christian label. And I remember us giving them money, and I remember us eating potato soup for a year.
Yeah, that's what you were saying.
Yeah, and as I grew older, I realized, wow, I thought it was because my mother was only a 10th grade. She can play 6 different instruments and write the most gorgeous, heavenly worship gospel songs you could hear, but she didn't have a smart businesswoman on certain things, but not on the music industry, and it's a whole different ball game.
I'm glad you brought that up because I've been in this business a long time, but there's always new things to learn, and there's always different avenues of this industry that we may be well-versed in one area and not so much in another. You can get taken if you're not careful. You can lose a lot of money real quick. It's clearly evident that you need to be educated from the beginning.
Yes, and a lot of parents say, well, should I discourage my child? Please don't do that because, you know, would you discourage your child from being a doctor if that was their passion? If your child has got the talent and the passion and the perseverance, they will succeed. It's a lot of work ethic. I've had, matter of fact, I got a really sweet message last August from a little girl that I had judged when she was 10 years old at a talent competition in Bowling Green at the Bowling Green Superstar Search. And her name was Tristan McIntosh. She was a top 5 African-American little girl that was on American Idol season before last. The last season before they renewed it. So I was very proud. I got the sweetest message from her mother. She said, I remember you telling us that she is going to be on national television by the time she was 16, and it was 2 weeks shy of her 16th birthday that her episode aired on American Idol.
Wow.
And I have a group of kids that was on the CBS Sing-Off. The youngest one was 7. We're still working on their career. The 7-year-old is now 16 years old. And if you cross Dolly Parton with Linda Ronstadt, you got her. So I don't ever have the parents discouraged, because I think it's doing the kids an injustice, because they need to find out if this is going to work for them. This is why the parents, being parents, need to be extremely well educated, knowledgeable in the workings, even if it's just a intellectual property. How do I protect my child and let them still live their dream? You know, it's so important for parents to understand that.
And one thing you said, success, what is that success? Success is relative. And we've had this conversation in different shows and in different meetings with people with regards to American Idol. Not everybody that wins American Idol goes on to be a huge success. It's relatively few that have made it that far on American Idol and then go on to become superstars. Yeah, you don't want to discourage your kids, but you gave me some bullet points here that I just want to go down them one at a time, because I think it's so important. First of all, do your research. That's the most important thing before you even put your foot in the doors. Know what it is you're doing, or at least have some semblance of an idea of what you're getting into.
Yes, and a big red flag is an ongoing joke here. If she's 10 years old and her ovaries aren't working, but they want to put her in a $20,000 recording studio, huge red flag. Because number one is, you don't need a $10,000, $5,000 CD to show your 10-year-old how great she is. Number one is, there's about 25,000 other people trying to do the same thing. The biggest thing is when your child is that young, she may change for the next year that she wants to do cheerleading or clarinet. So just when you have one that young, unless they're showing extremely above and beyond talent as an instrument, or sitting down writing their own songs or trying to put words and melodies together, then that's when you need to take a closer look. But the first thing you don't do is you don't go out and pay money for when they're 10. I have a 14-year-old that we did do a CD on, but it was very cost efficient. We had really good players on it because she had written every song on the record. That's a different kind of thing.
Yeah.
Another thing is recording music is when the parents will say, oh, it's only going to cost you $1,500 a song. We've already got the tracks. Your daughter just has to sing on them. Please be aware of that. Because what that usually means is another parent has paid money for that, and another parent, and another parent. So you're just a long line of a $1,500 line of musicians that's not going to get, they thought they were getting paid for one recording.
Yeah.
And they're getting paid, they should have been paid for 7. So it's probably not in your daughter's key or your son. It's probably not been legally attained to be able to use it behind your daughter's voice or son's voice.
And that's a big question right there, because who actually owns that song at that point? And have the clearances been approved? Because when you get an album out or even a song out there and you haven't got those clearances, that's a big problem.
Oh, yeah. I actually have a cousin, I'm not going to say the name because you're going to know who it is, who was, Daddy didn't know any better. Dad barely made it high school, but he was a basically made millionaire.
Right.
And they come to town and didn't let me know they were in town because they didn't realize who I was working for at the time. But they hired this man to do songs, all cover songs like Oceanfront Property and songs that my friends I had connection to, like Hank Cochran and things like that, recorded a whole 15-song demo of those songs. And when I called the manager up because I knew it was wrong. I mean, I was working for a company that was connected to Mike Curb at the time. And I said, did you get mechanical license from these songwriters and these publishers? He told me, you need to shut the flip up. And then I get a call from my cousin, you're going to ruin my career if you don't quit making phone calls and doing assumptions. Well, I was making a legal assumption that I was right because not one letter was in place. And the manager and this is the best part, The manager was taking half the door when the kid were performing his dad's venue. He also took half the money of all the CDs that were made, but he never put any money in. And so I had to back off that because basically the family was like, I know you're right, but you're going to ruin his stardom. But you know what? I can sleep at night because I know that I made the right decision on calling him out on something he was doing wrong.
Yeah.
So hopefully he does not doing it anymore.
We're going to take a little break, and when we come back, I want to keep going down this list that you have here. I think it's a lot of great things. Not just performing artists, songwriters, musicians should listen to, but if you are young, your parents should listen to this too, because I think there's a lot of great advice. We're in the studio today here in Nashville, Tennessee with Preshias Harris. You're listening to this edition of The Business Side of Music.
Hi, we're Rockland Road.
And you're listening to The Business Side of Music with Bob Bender.
You're listening to The Business Side of Music.
Hi, this is Vinny Ribas, the founder of Indie Connect. Our goal is to ensure that you have the knowledge, the tools, skills, resources, and connections that you need to develop a profitable and long-lasting career in music. One way we do this is through these Business Side of Music podcasts. I'd also like to invite you to check out Indie Connect magazine, our free multimedia online publication packed with practical interviews and advice from music industry experts. Go to www.indieconnectmag. That's www.indieconnectmag.com. Let us walk with you and guide you every step of your musical journey.
You're listening to The Business Side of Music.
This is Bob Bender. You're listening to this edition of The Business Side of Music. In the studio today with us, dear friend. I'm not going to use the word old because that's not right.
It's okay.
Yeah.
I'm married to an older man, so I can be,
But we've known each other quite a few years. Preshias Harris. And one of the things we didn't mention, actually, you're also an author of books. You have the one book that I believe you have one book or two books?
Two books.
You have two books. The College of Songology 101 is your one book. And then you're also the author of I Know Country, correct?
You're right. It's
Yeah.
a trivia book, and we use it on 1,800 stations for a year for CDX, so it's pretty cool.
Yeah.
So I was like morning show prep.
Well, before we get done, we'll let people know how they can get a hold of those books. But let's get back to this list that we're talking about here, because I think it's so important people understand what they're getting into. And this is one of my favorites, is get help from music industry insiders. Nashville's a little different animal than New York or LA in that we are very community-based. We've talked about that before the show, within the right circumstances. And there are a lot of music insiders here in this industry that will help you. But make sure you're getting connected with the right insiders, people that have knowledge and experience, right?
Yes, and one of the big things, I know there's couple of companies in town that they will pay and have paid and are paying now a country music artist to be part of their company to come in. It might be $600 to write with your child for 3 hours, which would be great, but that song may not go anywhere. You can brag about it for how long,
Right.
They also have them to come in as part of expense, to be part of their company, and they'll pay them $1,000 a month to show up for 1 hour and talk to the people in the company. So just because a country artist, and I'm not talking label, I'm talking a private, what they call an artist development company or things like that, just beware. Because the first thing is, there's BMI, CSAC, ASCAP are performing rights. That's how you get paid as a songwriter. Professional organizations such as NSAI, Tennessee Songwriters, the Gramis, NARIS, none of those companies can, by the legal laws that they've set forth within their mission statement, can endorse any one company. So if you see a company that says we're the only artist development company endorsed by so-and-so, it's a lie.
Run the other direction.
Run the other direction, because can you imagine Nashville Songwriters trying to endorse 60 or 70 artist development companies across the globe? It's a conflict of interest, biggest thing. Second thing is it's legal. So if they endorse someone and this person takes you and your family for all of your 401k, then who's liable legally? So that's why it is not referred. Just beware. The biggest thing is to don't talk to the people that work for the company. Talk to the people who's not there anymore to see how their experience was.
And I'm going to ask you, how do you find these industry insiders? If I'm a newbie that just comes to town, I got off the bus or the plane, got my guitar in hand.
Well, the biggest thing is ASCAP offers something called Straight Talk every Wednesday at 10 a.m. And you don't have to be a member. You can be a member of ASCAP or a member of BMI BMI or CSAC or Global Rights, PRO. Don't even have to be a member of anything, and just show up and talk to them and ask them questions, and they will do everything from Music Modernization Act. They'll go over to your copyrights, to how you get paid as a songwriter, and it's free. And then NSAI is a great organization to join because they will actually help steer you away from things. And even if you attend just one of this NSAI seminars, it is so worth it. And a lot of it, NSAI, if you have your, musician tax ID, your memberships to NSAI and like AIMP, like I belong to the Association, Independent Music Publishers Association, they are all tax deductible. And there's so much information, education out there. This is one reason why in the back of my book, I put all the different organizations and things like that so that you can actually find these organizations.
I know one of the things, I've dealt with in the past, you work with people and you think you're getting a deal, but it's not necessarily a good deal. So you're right. Do your research. Talk to the people not only that work at that company that maybe, have worked there. Talk to people that have had relationships, associations. But once again, it's kind of getting back to the very first question. Do your research. Know what you're getting into.
Yes, and I actually am on the board for the Country Showdown to help with songwriters and publishing, to help the kids with publishing deals and things like that. And I talked to Tom Jackson. He says, I can be in a room with someone and know within 10 minutes if they're full of it or not.
Yeah.
And Tom Jackson, straight shooter, yeah. He is actually the one who helped Taylor create her stage show. He is the genius behind that. And I think some of his other clients I've heard of was Keith Urban and Kenny Chesney. So Tom is a genius on live stage performance. So he will tell you the way it is. So there's so many people that will shake their head, no, don't go there, and run.
Yeah.
Because everybody's so afraid of getting sued. They're not going to say this person screwed me over, so-and-so. They'll say, I would advise against that, is what they say. And if they say that means I know a lot, do not go there.
This brings us to the next bullet point on the list, which is do surround yourself with legitimate people. And that, once again, gets back to doing the research, talking to music industry insiders, because legitimacy is a very small pond in a very big pool. You're a very small segment in a very big pool. So you have to make sure that the people you're dealing with that are talking to. With that being said, that doesn't mean that somebody hasn't had bad luck along the way in this business, because we've all been there. We've all, had to take our losses and lick our wounds. But, there are legitimate people out there that have been in this business for a long time. I'm going to say it, such as yourself. I've known you for, 20 some odd years. And I think it's important that people surround themselves with legitimate people.
I've actually got taken several years ago, and here I am. I was 50 years old, and I've been in the business for 35 years. But sometimes you can't see the forest for the trees. Yes,
we want to believe.
And I put that person on a pedestal. And when it all came down in the office up on the third floor of ASCAP Nashville with Brooks and Dunn's founder, Tim DuBois, was in the room, and several other big players were in the room. And it came out, the first time I've ever cried in front of an executive. I asked the person, a couple of other people, it was a huge room of who's who. I said, why didn't you tell me? He said, because I knew that until that you physically saw it with your own eyes, that you wasn't going to do it. You'd have to find out yourself. He said, I prayed for you every day because I knew you were in danger and things like that. But he said, I knew that you weren't there because of the money. You were there because you loved the kids and believed in them, This is one reason why it's so important to build relationships. Kelsey Ballerini is a good example. She started coming here when she was 15, writing her own songs with her pink sparkly guitar. I was able to give her she's an ASCAP member, and I was able to give her a gold ASCAP #1 for her #1 song, Are You Gonna Kiss Me? Anyway, we were at the #1 party, and they were talking about her. She said, she was just over the moon. She was just on cloud nine. She looked like she was floating on stage. And she said, I started coming here with my pink sparkly guitar, and I was 15 years old, and you all opened your door and let me play you songs and music. And she said, I'm so glad that those people who opened those doors for me, I stayed in contact with and built relationships with. When she would come back for her visits, when she got out of high school, she made the move straight down here. And she'd already started building those relationships. And they sort of guided her parents on what to do and how to help her. But she had those relationships, and she's 23, I think, now. But she had those relationships established when she was 15. And what's so funny is we interviewed Megan Trainor at ASCAP back in May. She was at the ASCAP Expo. And she said, you see where you are? She said, I was here. I'm 24. I was here when I was 16. In 2010, I was here. 8 years ago. No, 2008, I was where you guys are. 10 years ago. She said, so expos, things like that, industry things like country radio seminar, and I have a list of certain things that can help you. Go to ASCAP seminars if they have one. There's a really good place to learn things and because they talk about everything from social media, how to protect your child, things like that. So make sure not only have you build relationships, is look for different organizations or seminars. Like I attended the DIY CD Baby seminar. Amazing.
Right.
Amazing.
Which was amazing,
And it was
yeah.
so much information that the parent came up to me that I know of a child who's 12, who looks like she's 17. And I said, how did the Spotify? And I want to see what her reaction was, because I know mine was like, holy cow, we're not doing enough with Spotify. And she goes, oh my God, I realize as a parent of a 12-year-old, 13-year-old, that I'm not doing near enough with Spotify and YouTube and things like that, but I also have to protect my child. So I always tell the parents, before you even start making trips to Nashville, get a P.O. box. Move everything to that P.O. box. I showed a father one day, and I know it's a little bit off subject, but I need to, while I'm on it with the parents, I showed the father a picture of his daughter on this website you can go find, paid $3.95 a month, and it showed where they lived, what she drove, where their house was located, how old she was, and all of her social media. And it scared the father to death.
Stuff.
So this is one reason why I really surround yourself with legitimate people, build your relationships, and attend conventions that will make you more knowledgeable, more educated, because knowledge and education is a power, along with an attorney to protect your child.
We're going to take a break. When we come back, we got a couple more things to talk about. Obviously, we've got so much here that this is going to wind up being a 2-part series, which I'm fine with if you're fine with.
If I can save one child's dream, it's worth it all.
I agree, and that's part of the reason we do these podcasts, too. In the studio with us today, author, industry consultant, all-around good person, Preshias Harris is in with us today, and you're listening to this edition of The Business Side of Music.
Hi, this is Bobby Blazier, and I have worked with such artists as Michael Martin Murphey, Raul Malo, and Amy Grant, and you are listening to The Business Side of Music.
You're listening to The Business Side of Music.
Wow, I just joined the Music Starts Here community. This is a truly hidden gem for anyone in the music business. Whether you live in Nashville or anywhere else in the world, Music Starts Here is like a GPS for your music career. This is the place to be if you want to get advice and direction from some seriously talented musical people who have been where you want to go. Music news, events, and a great big community with resources for artists, songwriters, musicians, studio and tech, along with music business advice from pros in the industry, all on one site. Make sure you get your free profile now. Go to www.musicstartshere.org. That's musicstartshere.org.
You're listening to The Business Side of Music.
This is Bob Bender. We're back in the studio today here in Nashville, Tennessee with Preshias Harris. Going down this list of things, what it really comes down to is, my child wants to be in the music business. What mistakes can we avoid? Well, let's face it. You're not going to avoid all the mistakes. We all make them in this business. Part of it is because this is a living, breathing embodiment that we work in, and it's constantly changing.
Yes.
It's evolving.
Hopefully help you make less mistakes.
Absolutely. Talking during the break, we were sharing some things. We didn't touch on one thing that I do want to talk about real quickly here is, and I think this is vitally important. We did talk about do surround yourself with legitimate people, but the one thing we didn't touch on is do build relationships, because you and I are a good example. We've had a relationship on and off for 20 years, even though we didn't see each other for probably 10 years. It's just the same way with other people within this industry. Vinny Ribas, Vinny and I have known each other off and on for 10 years. Doak Turner's, a lot of us that, we kind of get out of the limelight for a while and then we get back in. But in many cases, like none of us have missed a beat or missed a step.
I got to tell you the story. I've had 84 surgeries, been blind, crippled, in a wheelchair, and I don't take disability. I work 3 jobs. So I saw an ad for Tell Your Story to Chicken Soup for the Country Song. I thought, well, I got a story. Went over there for an interview. Because of my connections at the time, they ended up wanting me to come to work for the book. So I ended up starting doing part-time publicity, and we went on a book tour with a guy named Roy Lee Feek, who wrote a song called Chain of Love for Clay Walker, And we took a chicken soup for the country soul military tour to all the military bases. And Doak had called the office there in Nashville here, said, hey, I'd love to be a part of the book. I can get you in Charlotte. I can do this. And I'm like, that's great. So next thing I know, I'm booking a meeting with the governor of West Virginia, where his home state is. And his friend from high school works for the governor of West Virginia. And so I said, if you come to Nashville, I will show you the red carpet. So he come to Nashville. We'd be hanging out with Mayborn Axton and, Merle Kilgore. And I took him to Sammy B's. And everybody was there. And he just fell in love with it. He goes, I've got to move to Nashville. I love it. Dope did.
Dope,
Ended up moving not too long after that. And we always say he's the male Precious, and I'm the female Doak. Because our lifelong dream is just to network people, make things happen, pay it forward. And ever since the day we met in 97, I think, that we've been paying it forward with each other in our circles.
Yeah. So it was about the same time I met Doak too. I think he had just come off
NASCAR Country, yes.
NASCAR Country, yeah. Yeah, that's when of course, I'm a big NASCAR
and Al, who's
fan,
a good friend of his, Al Winter was a big DJ then. And him and Al become friends, and Al goes, well, I know Precious. I knew her when she was an intern. I said, I'm still an intern. And he starts laughing. But yeah, it was all about relationships.
Yeah. And that is so important. And we're going to talk about that in the second series, or the second episode of the series, about not burning bridges. But I think it is important to build relationships. And we touched on this in the very beginning, which is the next item here, which is do not assume. And that's so critical. We had this conversation before we started the show. So many artists come to town and they think everything's just, all the glitter is gold. And, we've said this, sometimes it's fool's gold. But don't assume anything. And it kind of gets back, do your research and know your people and surround yourself with, experts in the industry. Because assuming you can't possibly assume everything that's going on. Of course.
And the biggest thing I see is the parents assume that they have their own business, that they know, I can come here, I run my own business, I run my own, body shop, I run my, bakery, I can do that. When they get here, it's a culture shock because they realize it may be the same business on paper, but as far as the relationships, your relationship is built with your customers. Your relationships here are built with people you've never met before. So it's a little bit of a difference of building your relationships. The biggest thing is people assume and do not assume that what you see on the talent show on American Idol and The Voice equals to what's on Music Row. It is a completely different ballgame. And I'll tell you 3 quick scenarios. First one, I started a competition at the Wild Horse called the Wild Horse Talent Search in 2002. Well, the end of that year, they're like, it didn't go as well. We're going to wait. Well, the next season, they kicked off something called the Nashville Star. And that stemmed from my talent show that I had created with me and Randy Boudreau from Curb, when Randy was working with Curb Artist. Yeah. And they started that. And the guy that I had been paying to do my demos, one named Buddy Jewell. Okay, and he had been, everybody thought it was an overnight success. I've been paying him demos for at least 2 or 3 years, singing our demos. So there was that one. And then I had a kid, I knew when he was 8 years old. I met him at Charlie Daniels, the Angelus, which is a treasure in Florida. His name was Aaron Kelly. He ended up top 5, season 9, American Idol. Come here, put him on tour for a year. Things did not follow through with what the actual contract said. He's ended up moved back to Pennsylvania, but he's got a new group out. 7 years later, he's going to revamp again and start a new career. Yeah. I have a little cousin who was on Team Blake on The Voice. She's still playing shows in Nashville, but because she was eliminated, but she was able to sustain her career playing live shows. She was already well known all over Kentucky singing. Loretta Lynn said, "You're one of my favorite singers, and you're not even 16 yet." And then I had a couple of years ago, in 2000, it's 16, I think, but I think I got him a private audition because it does happen behind the scenes for a talent show, and he ended up getting top 25, and he is now really close to signing a major record deal. But it took 5 years, from the time he left the show, and we're going into our 5th year at the end of this year that he was on television, right, to get the golden ticket. So don't assume that just because you're on that TV show and you win or you don't win, that it's easy peasy. That is the easy part. The hardest part is Austin. His dad was Tommy Allsep. His name is Austin Allsep, that was on The Voice a couple of 3 years ago. Austin said, that was the easy part, getting on there. He said, trying to sustain my career in the music industry is the hard part. He said, I'm playing everywhere, but, trying to work on a record and trying to get songs and all that. He said, it becomes a big reality check.
And stay in the spotlight too.
Yeah. And but like I said, I just want the parents to know that what you see on TV does not equal anything of what you're really going to be faced against.
Not even close.
And this is why that going into the next number 5 one is emphasize real music education before a music career. And what that means is trying to attend some of these seminars and stuff so that you have knowledge at the end of your fingertips. And it is worth it. The seminar, I think, DIY was $159 if you early registered.
And to me, some of the best money you could ever spend.
You're going to pay $150 to get your hair done for 6 weeks.
Yeah.
I know,
Well,
but seriously,
yeah,
$159
Yeah.
for knowledge that no one can ever take away from you. That's the best part. When you're at these things and you learn, that is one thing that no one can ever take away from you is knowledge and education. Once you've got it in your brain, and you've got it, you can help your child. That's something that no one can ever take away.
And sometimes that education
Yes.
is experience. Street smarts are sometimes as good, if not better, than book
Yes,
smarts.
and you can't. A lot of parents think that if they, for instance, I'll read it for what I wrote. Likewise, never pay a music industry consultant or anyone else a huge sum of money in return for guaranteed results. You can't buy music industry stardom, and no one worth working with will make you any guarantees in the music industry. Ask anyone at the top of the food chain.
I love that.
Yeah,
Ask
and
anyone
I
at the
got
top
a
of the
good
food
example. Randy Goodman, president of Sony Records. Randy's mother used to own Bowling Green Mobile Homes years ago when I was in interior design school. I was still in Bowling Green in the late 80s, and it was 3 years before we met. But he had worked his way up. And I remember a couple of artists that they knew was going to be superstars. The label made great decisions on marketing and promotion stuff, but the star made bad choices in his personal life. So
Right.
it does
And
happen.
that does happen.
It happens a lot. No one can promise to make your child a star. No one can promise to make anybody a star, but they might promise a record deal. You might sign a record deal, but this is not equal to stardom.
And you know what? I'm going to interject here because you can throw a lot of money,
yeah.
and we've seen it. You and I have both seen it. You can throw a lot of money at something. There's no guarantee you're going to be a star. I've always said this in this business. It's there's 3 components. You better have talent, and you better create some opportunities, find some opportunities. But there's that third one, luck. You got to have a little bit of luck too, because that's a little bit about how everybody gets into this business and is successful. You wind up being in the right place at the right time, the right people see you, and it helps elevate you to that
matter
next
of fact,
level.
add to that, I was at a meeting at a big publisher here in town, and the guy's very well respected, and I made the artist, is a child at the time, 17. She wasn't 18 yet. Went in there and I made her take her hard copy of her lyric books and everything I helped her put together for her publishing company. Because your publishing company, you're talk about uncomfortable, is handing your phone to an executive and someone texts you the wrong thing and you're like, oh, there's my song catalog. It's in my phone. Bad mistake. Show work ethic. That binder, he looked at me after the meeting. He said, I saw that your child had work ethic. I said, well, if I'm chasing their dream faster than you and them, their parents, everything, then I'm in the wrong dream. If I look back and you're nowhere to be seen, and I look ahead and you're a mile ahead of me, then I know I need to work a little harder. If I look back and you're lagging behind, don't let the door hit you on the hind end on the way out, because the way to balance a good career is you got to have patience, perseverance, passion. But everybody in town, when I heard them speak at the conventions, is how many of you work on your career every day? Only 3 or 4 hands went up.
That's right.
Every day.
And then you wonder why you're
and
not
I did a
getting
seminar
results.
about 2 months ago, and I said, if you wrote down a song title, 365 days a year, okay, you took 1 day off for Christmas, New Year's, but during that time, let's just say you wrote a song title called I Got Friends in Low Places or something like that. Wonder if you've never written down that title. So if you look back 365 days later, 364 days of that year, you've done something to move your career forward. So at the end of your career, guess what? There's no regrets, because you knew that every day you've done something to get to the next level. And John Party put it best. He said, it's a 10-year town. I know. This is exactly the same month I had my #1 for Dirt on My Boots that I came 10 years ago, And when I interviewed Jessie Lee at her and Brent Young's #1 Party for Brent's song, she goes, oh, Precious, it wasn't a 10-year town for me. It was 11. Because nobody wanted her as an artist. They wanted her as a songwriter. So, it just depends on the different people that are putting your path. Do you move forward and keep going, or do you just hide and hike out and take off?
We're gonna stop it here because we got so much more to cover, and we're just gonna go into the second episode of this. Got in the studio today, Preshias Harris. She is the author of a couple books, I Know Country and The College of Songology. Preshias is probably one of the most well-known and leading music consultants here in Nashville. Definitely something to listen to. And we're going to continue to talk about this topic of conversation that we've been covering, which is, my child wants to be in the music business. How, what mistakes do I need to avoid? What steps do I need to take? And I think this is great. We're covering this, and we're going to pick this up on the next episode. Thanks for being in the studio with us. As a listener, you know that the Business Side of Music podcast is free, but in order to keep it running, consider becoming a patron of our show. You can do this by going to our Patreon page on our website, which is www.businesssideofmusic.com, and click on the Support the Podcast button. When you become a patron of our podcast, you'll have access to material that you won't be hearing on our regular show, insight from industry leaders such as Preshias, that is designed for our patron members, and have the ability to purchase the Business Side of Music merchandise that you can find on our website at a discount. This is Bob Bender, and you're listening to this edition of The Business Side of Music.
The Business Side of Music is the creation of Tom Sabella and Traci Snow and is produced by Bob Bender. Co-producer for the show is Vinny Ribas. The Business Side of Music is recorded at Music Dog Studios in Los Angeles, California and Nashville, Tennessee. Production sound designed by Keith Stark. Voiceover and promo by Lisa Fuson.